So what we're going to try to achieve in this particular session is, now that you've been to your sites, you've looked at the form, you try to fill out the form. Now we just want to tell you what are some of the things that we wanted you to look at. And if you haven't thought about it, this would be a little bit of a reminder of what this exercise was supposed to be. But this is now getting into the nitty-gritty. From this morning, this is now we're actually getting into the details of stuff, and we're thinking about an action plan. So this is actually our process of how do we evaluate a place. Now, a great public space, it's not just a dot on a map. It's also surrounded by another larger dot, in a way. So a square, a great square, has two parts. It has an inner square and an outer square. What is the outer square? It is the edges. So it is the businesses or the uses or whatever is on the sides that spills into a public space. So that's kind of feeding into it. And the inner square is where your stage is. Like, it doesn't have to be a physical stage, but it's sort of a stage for activity. So whatever happens down in the middle of that square is like all the eyes on that. So it's like there's a life in the middle, and then there's a thread of life on the side, which is kind of feeding into the system. So it's two things. It's the inner dot and then the outer envelope to that. So the edge uses are extremely important to bring that life into it. If it's a classroom, or if it's a salon, or if it's a restaurant, whatever it is. And what it is contributing to the public space is very important. So it's two things combined. And then the other thing we say is that a great public space reaches out. So thinking about what we talked about in the morning, the power of 10, the multiplier effect, having more than one things, more than one great places in a city. So what this principle really states is that your public space, if it's great, it has a lot of life, that life should spill out like an octopus into the rest of the neighborhood and start to enliven that as well. So this is Union Square in New York City. I know it's a different scale for a lot of people to relate to it, which is totally fine. But the idea is to get the concept that the life of this square, it has a farmer's market there 2 days a week, Cynthia? Right?
No, it's 4 days.
Oh, 4 days. Okay, it's 4 days a week. Market on the left-hand side of that square. Then there's businesses all around it. Sadly, they're all chains. There's like Burlington Coat Factory there. There's a Subway and all that. There are a lot of chains, and New York is famous for its uniqueness and the local shops as well. So, not really happy about the kind of things that are around there, but it's a lot of energy, and that kind of spills into all the other streets that are around there, and they've slowly gotten more and more active. Wait, what happened? I think I'm missing a slide. But anyway, so, and the reasons for people to be there. Creating a destination means giving people attractions, giving people reasons to get to there. So to have really, you have to really think about choices. You have to think about more than one thing to do. Because if you go to a place and you do one thing once, you'll probably do it twice. You'll probably do it thrice. But the chances are after a while, that's going to fade away. So having options and having flexibility, something that changes and evolves over time is really important. And when you're thinking about multiple uses, like in your place game, when you're thinking about multiple things to do, it's also really important to think about how those multiple things interact with each other. So Cynthia talked about this in the morning. She called it synergy. There's another word for it, it's called triangulation. So all that means is that if you have a coffee shop, which is geared towards people who drink coffee, and if it's a neighborhood where there are a lot of children and people are going to bring their children with them, then you give something for the kids to do right next to it. You see what I mean? So it's like how those things interact with each other is very important. And if there's a group of seniors who like to come to that spot for, they want to do knitting classes there or something that they get together for in the evening. So close to that coffee shop, a place where they can actually gather around in a circle, sit and knit maybe. So all the activities, how they interact with each other and build off of each other is very important. So location is strategic. And then thinking seasonal. All of these principles are kind of complementary. When we're talking about choices, we're talking about flexibility, we're talking about things evolving over time. So one great thing that you can do, and anybody can do, is just capitalize on whatever different seasons you get. I know, some places are more fortunate in that regard, some places are not, some places get blizzards like we get and nobody wants to come out. But whatever your seasonality is, it gives you an automatic, natural opportunity to create differences. If it's a fabulous spring when all the flowers come out, so think about a flower festival. If it is a bad blizzard, which is eventually going to die down, think about snow-related festivals. there's ice carving, and there's all sorts of things. But whatever seasonality you get to build it into a public space is really important. Bryant Park, again, New York City, apologies for, we're kind of obsessed with our city, but we shouldn't be. But, so this has a whole festival around winter. There's a skating rink in the middle, there's a holiday market that comes and goes for 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks in December, a little bit into January. But it's got a holiday market, thinking about Christmas, it's got a winter rink, ice rink going on, and all the things that have to do, that symbolize winter, because a lot of the other things in Bryant Park, kind of things that make it beautiful, go away. The trees don't have leaves on them. The flowers are not pretty. So all those pretty aspects of the park kind of naturally go away. So they bring in the winter aspect to, you know, give it a different kind of beauty. And there are other ways to do that. It's not just, you know, the big massive festival that you can bring around. It could be just activities. So if you have a particular growing season with particular vegetables and particular fruits, organizing a market around that can be another idea. So whichever seasons, you know, we're lucky to get wherever we are. And then thinking about uniqueness. So identity and image has a lot to do with uniqueness. And you have a whole category in your place game again. But what it's really talking about is what is authentic and unique to Isla Vista, and how could you emphasize that? How could you underline that and make it a part of your strategy? Because when somebody comes here, and if you want them to, you know, visit again in a positive manner, spend their money, do economic development, whatever have you, if you want people to do that, you want to make a good first impression. And maybe the identity has to do with the great food co-op you have, or maybe the identity does have to do with the university's relationship to the city. Whatever it is that all of you decide collectively, that identity has to be underlined and, you know, sort of emphasized in your plan. Can be winter lighting, whatever creative, you know, if you have lighting installations, or if you have a lighting festival, whatever you have that is different about this place, emphasize it so it's different. And then flexibility is key. You saw this image in the morning. Here it is once again. This is right outside Harvard. The Harvard Yard is over back there, a very typical derelict dry quad, which somehow universities are kind of great at doing. You know, they automatically have all this audience, you know, they automatically have this foot traffic, but then quads are so dead. So this was just like one of those, you heard the story in the morning, but then if you look closely to this, whatever's happening, it looks like there are a lot of people and they love it. And every time the food trucks are out, there are that many people. So this is not a one-off. This was not a special event. But just look at everything that's kind of making this place up. And what you'll start noticing is that it's all flexible. It's all flexible amenities. You could move those umbrellas around. There are two different kind of umbrellas, so you break the monotony a little bit. The food trucks can come in and go away. Then there's the giant chessboard, which is, you know, the board is there, but the chess pieces come and go. So every piece of it is flexible, and it can change over time, because chances are 2 years of this happening, people are gonna get bored with how it looks. And there's only so many things you can do with fixed amenities. So thinking about things that you can change, things that are flexible, things that you can combine, you know, sitting alone versus sitting with 10 people. So things that you can actually modify, because that gives the user an immense power. When you get to move your chair, just even if it's like 2 inches, it makes you feel powerful. Like you made your arrangement, you interacted with that space. So just to keep the user in mind, it's a very psychological thing. You want to empower them, and then you want to give people options. This principle is very close to my heart. I'm a non-driver, born and raised Indian. I'm sort of really spoiled by buses and taxis and, you know, rickshaws and walking and, you know, bicycles. So I think having those options is really great, because everybody has a different top preference. So it's important to think about how the traffic is moving, because people want to get from point A to point B. People are going to come in groups. They're probably going to be, you know, some people are going to be in cars, other people are going to be in vans. So how do you make traffic move? But then on top of that, how do you work in transit in between that? Because transit centers can be places in themselves. And we looked at that in the morning. But this is just to re-emphasize that, you know, transit centers can be things on their own. Not only do they get you from point A to point B, those A's and B's can be really important too. So it's a very enriching kind of component of a public space. And then obviously the foot traffic. And this is one of those things that if you build an environment that is suitable for walking, people will walk. Human beings as as the species, we are born walkers. That's the first thing we learn to do on our own. That's our first sign of independence. We stand up, we take the first step. So when you make a place suitable for pedestrians, they are going to come. And when the pedestrians come, the businesses are going to do better. All the destinations are going to do better because you get the foot traffic. So you have to like build all of that in. So this is Pioneer Courthouse Square in Portland, Oregon. They're very fortunate that they adopted this policy early on. So now their transit system is a lot more robust than a lot of other cities, but there are also a lot of lessons to be learned. You know, they rely on their bus system. They rely on their light rails, and you know, they have trolley cars and all those things, in addition to having a really robust walking infrastructure. Their sidewalks are great, their crosswalks are great. If only that city had a lot more sun, they would have been a lot. All they need is sun.
We'll trade.
Give them a little sun.
Okay, so and why do you want to do that? Because you want to create connections. Example of that is your university and your town right here. They are next to each other. They're not as well connected as you would want them to be. So every destination has to build off of the other one. It's all like being happy neighbors. So you want it to be connected so you can go from one place to the other with ease without actually having to necessarily get in your car or, you know, take off your bicycle. Maybe sometimes you just want to walk. So you want to utilize the proximity to other destinations. So you want it to connect it. And you want to give people choice. So range means choice, and people like that. Sometimes you want to walk, sometimes you want to take the car. It's all about preference that day, that time. And you have to think about diversity. You have to accommodate everybody, because if a public space is not inclusive, then it's a club, and you don't want it to be felt like a club. You don't want to make it exclusive, because then that exclusive group is going to be the steward. That exclusive group is going to be contributing money. That doesn't say much about sustainability now, does it? It's just, for me at least, the way I see it, America is the land of diversity, right? It's the land of immigrants. So if all of us were immigrants at some point, why aren't we mixing a whole lot more? So when we're looking at public spaces, at least that's our public state. We should be thinking about them for everybody. You know, people from all walks of life, kids, seniors, people who can walk or cannot walk. You know, there can be different reasons for that. People who can drive or cannot drive. So it's all about considering every group, and it's difficult to maintain long-term functioning of a public space if you're relying on one constant source of funding, because we all know sources of funding fall off. You know, there are all sorts of, you know, there has been a recession, we've seen all sorts of problems with getting constant funding. So that is why you have to think about a variety of things that can complement each other. Maybe there is one grant that can be that you can apply for, and it's through an arts community. It's through the arts community. Maybe there's another grant that you can apply for, and maybe it's not a grant. Maybe it is a part of the funding of the Department of Transportation that you can pull from. You know, maybe it has to do with sidewalk extensions and sidewalk enhancements, and somehow you want to get that money and use it for creating crosswalks or whatever have you. So getting creative with where the money is and how to bring it together and apply it, you know, in coordination with the other thing. Everything can complement the other, but relying on more than one source is really important. So this kind of, you know, gives you an idea of where Pioneer Courthouse Square's funding comes from. Part of it comes from the Parks Department. Part of it comes from city funding. There are some in-kind donations, because if people really like a public space, they use it a lot, chances are that they're going to feel that they're attached to that place and they would want to give back. I mean, sometimes it's donations and money, other times it's just time. So they'll come out and they'll volunteer. So whatever it is, it's a contribution. And it has to relate to adjacent uses. So going back to the whole, there's an inner square and an outer square. You cannot ignore the context of where your public space sits. So it has to be connected in some way, shape, or form. And it has to be different. These are not by any means prescriptive. It's different in every case, and we don't know how it will relate. We don't know how Isla Vista would relate to UCSB. You all know, but what we're saying is that it's important to react to what's next to you. And they have to be, so thinking about, let's say the building where we're sitting. The great thing about this is that you can roll all these shutters up, and it sort of, the inside and the outside becomes oh, we can't roll them?
No, it's just temporarily taped with
Roofing paper. All right, so to do is we're going to tear it off. And what will happen is that suddenly the sun will come in and people who are walking outside will be able to see you. So the use is transparent. I'm not literally talking about the transparency of the shutters and the glass, but just having that inside-outside connection. And we all know and we see it work in coffee shops, in restaurants that have outdoor seating. So if there's already a successful restaurant adjacent to your public space, let it spill out and over into your public space so you both benefit from each other. So transparency is a very important thing, and it can help. It's a very helpful thing. And then thinking about short term. So we're going to think about that a little more today and tomorrow. So short-term demonstrations, you can find this under several tags. Internet is a great resource. If you look at pop-up urbanism, or pop-up improvements, or you look at DIY, or you look at tactical urbanism, whatever you can call it, but what this means is that now we've created a vision for this place. That vision might take 15 years to get implemented. What do we do tomorrow so we don't lose the momentum? So we don't lose the community that just gave us all this input. We have to do something tomorrow. Maybe we don't have a lot of money. So thinking strategically, so thinking tactically to implement something, going for the lowest hanging fruit to actually implement something, that is the short term. That is the idea behind and it could be anything. In the case of Travis Park, it was hula hoops. And we also see that worked in Providence, Rhode Island, so we would swear by hula hoops. The power of hula hoops is great. And the power of alcohol is great, which I think Ilo knows very well. But hula hoops, alcohol, and there was a third one.
No, it's
Food.
Here?
No, it was food, obviously. There was another one. It'll come to me.
Light. No.
And so this is also an example of temporary things. There's a wooden deck, and that is also modular, by the way. But to add places to sit, places to relax on top of it, beanbags, like moving chairs, kiddie benches back there. So it's all very, done in a pop-up style, so that when it goes away, or if you have to take it away, or if it, if that stuff breaks, it's not too much damage. And if it fails, you can move things around, and even then it's not too much damage. So this is a low risk, low liability kind of testing things out. That's what it really means.
And that was Providence. That was our Burnside Park
Yes,
Imagination Center.
that was our Providence with case study that you saw in the
Outdoor reading room. Thank you.
And so this gives you a little bit, and I'm going to try to flip through this fairly quickly because this is the story of one square in particular. So Pittsburgh Market Square, which used to be a traffic island, there used to be a roundabout in the middle, and there was nothing much going on. And this whole area that you see was really divided into 4 different squares. And what happened was that none of them got a whole lot of use because you were separated by these fast-moving traffic lanes. So we did a power of 10 exercise there, and this actually, there are 12, and that's why in our presentation we said power of 10 plus. Just thinking of that as keeping the multiplier effect in mind, that there has to be more than one reason, and 10 is sort of, the golden number. So this actually had more than 10, so understanding what are the different assets, what are the different pieces, what are the different rooms within the room kind of idea. So what are the different aspects of a public space that you can improve so that they all work together to make it a great destination. And then looking at it, zoom out, looking at the same power of 10 on a neighborhood level. What are the connections? How will it reach out like an octopus? What are those connections that need to be made? Where is the rest of the energy? Where are the rest of the people so that we can bring them all in? So this is the same exercise on a larger scale. And then this sort of shows you what it looks like, from building to parks with split by roadways to actually a little, not quite a roundabout, but roundabout looking place. They've tried to create like this symbolic gesture of a circle that it's all combined, but it's not gonna work when it's split. So then taking all of that away, very simple, flat space, that's another key. For a place to be successful, it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be really, really simple, it can be really, really intuitive. So taking all of that away, creating one big platform or one big stage, and then letting these things sort of organically happen in it. The connections are still there because people are gonna wanna go from one side to the other. That square, the connection remains, but it's just not a physical barrier anymore. It's all one space. And then, you provide amenities around that. There's like everything here, again, the same thing is all movable. All those umbrellas are movable, all those plants are movable, and then programming would be the next key thing in here that, yeah, you got amenities, but then what are the programs? What are the uses? What are the attractions that are going to bring people out here?
Where did the cars go?
Oh, cars, you know, believe it or not, cars find a way, and they're still out there. These are like shared spaces now. So it's a very popular concept in Europe. Who asked the question, by the way? I'm like looking at the right. Yes, okay, I'm looking at the right person. So shared space is a very famous concept in Europe. It used to be the norm here as well. It used to be the norm everywhere, that you just have one surface. There's no sidewalk, there's no curb, there's no asphalt, one surface. And everybody respects the other because it's the element of surprise. A pedestrian could come from anywhere. A skateboarder can come from anywhere. So everybody goes slowly and everybody enjoys it more. So this actually has shared spaces around it. So you can see the cars parked there. They just move a whole lot slowly.
Cool.
Because, you know, there's another element, big element right there. Yes?
So how do you deal with security with all these flexible setups? Because we used to have, say, chairs that you could move around on campus that weren't locked out. If they tend to get legs and walk away.
So I'll give you a short story about that, very short. So Bryant Park in New York City, which was one of PPS's early projects even before I was born. So it was a long, long, long time ago. And that was a time in New York City that public spaces were not really a phenomenon. Leaving stuff out there was not a phenomenon. Having flexible classes and amenities was not a phenomenon. But that was one of those things that William White, our entire Project for Public Spaces is based on his work. And he said the same thing, that it's extremely empowering for people when they can move things around and create their own arrangements. But that's not going to work alone. Like, the amenities are not going to work alone. You're going to want to have programs there. You're going to have other uses and other eyes. So maybe a coffee shop, maybe a sandwich shop. So putting a lot more eyes in the space and then having the amenities, they actually didn't walk away. Those chairs were really, really cheap. That are the Parisian green chairs that fold. And when they do their counts, they did it every week, didn't they, initially? So they did weekly counts of those chairs. Very few missing, very cheap to buy back, and the actual damage was when those chairs would break. So that was the only, like, people didn't take them away because now they had all these other things to do. They had a reason to go to that place, and they suddenly felt responsible for things that were provided to them. Because if it's a public amenity and I get to use it every day, I'm going to want to take care of that so that it doesn't go away, so that the city doesn't take it away. So it was that kind of time when it was, you know, it was a revolution from that point on in public spaces, and people wanted that to stay that way. They didn't want it to be taken away.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. This is a spoiler alert teaser for tomorrow afternoon. But you have to get to a tipping point where you buy them back and you put them back and they're there. Just like with graffiti, you just wipe it away, it comes back, you wipe it away, and then you do a mural, or it just doesn't come back, or people steal the bulbs out of the public planters, you replant. You know, you have to kind of get to the tipping point. Because once you replace the chairs and you clean the mural and you replant the flowers, people realize, oh, somebody's taking care of this. This is managed. Yep. Someone could be watching me actually do this because they know I'm doing it, and you know they're coming back after me to fix it. So there's that sort of social control. You don't actually see somebody cleaning graffiti right behind you, but you know that someone is actually doing that, so that the space is being taken care of. People tend to abuse public spaces, or when it's clear that no one is in charge, you know, that there's no sort of sense of stewardship or ownership over it, and they can kind of get away with it. So there are these subtle ways of sort of demonstrating that actually the space is managed, it is cared for. You're not just, and they pull the chairs in. Sometimes they chain them up at night. It's such a flimsy chain that the way bicycles disappear in New York City with the robust locks, that chain is nothing. Yeah. That's like a thread. But it's more of a deterrent.
Yeah. It's more like a visual cue, and you can have that by, you know, having, if there's a management group, having the name of the management group in 5 places on Wayfinding. It's just all the visual cues.
You know, on the back of the chair, or people adopting the chairs, or things like that.
It's just adding the whole human factor to that activation.
So it's all part of a whole package.
Yes. So this was the vision, community placemaking vision that was achieved.
This was before we thought we could close the roads. This was like, you cannot close the roads.
We have to keep it.
You got to keep these 4 separate spaces. So we're like, okay, we can do that. We can work with that. 4 different squares.
And they each had sort of an identity of their own. So they're like the rooms between the room idea. But then the reason we have it up here is this is a robust next step from when you do this place game and you're looking at a particular area. The next step for that is to start developing a vision.
And
Start
that's what we're going
understanding.
to do tomorrow
Tomorrow.
morning. Very excited.
And that's, you know, Martius Square in Pittsburgh. It's, you know,
And it's
nighttime
cold,
use.
and it's night, and it's winter, and it's a
And they
Martius.
had those screens, so they had like heating things inside. They had heating elements inside. But people are not inside, people are outside. They're not using the heating elements as much. So you already did the place game at your site. Now flesh out all your thoughts and brainstorm for like, we'll give you 10 more minutes. Flesh out all your thoughts, write them up on those flip charts that you see floating around.
Or on one sheet if you've already got. You can either use a flip chart or if you've got somebody who's writing on one of the game forms.
Because we're gonna write these all out as notes, and we're gonna try to synthesize them a little bit. So if you write on flip charts, that's really great because it's easier to type them up and read them and things like that. But it's up to you. So that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna brainstorm these ideas for improvement, and then you're gonna do a report back because each one of you went to a different site, and the others don't know. So this is gonna be all fresh information for everybody. So just, you know.
What are these? Are there more cool pictures?
Yes. We have
talk
a
about
whole
what we did
section.
here?
I could go.
You could go. So
We
these
just
are
have to
some of
write
the
it on
ways
a
when
bigger-
we to explain a little bit, like when we're just if there's other things you might want to think about.
Yeah.
In terms of what we mean by access and.
Yeah, so this was a little bit geared towards if you were to do the presentation before you actually did that, but I'm just quickly going to go through them anyway. So access and linkage, it's on your form. We wanted you to rate it. What are you looking for? Is it convenient to get to? Is it walkable? Is there continuous proximity, you know? And is it connected to the other places that are around it? Is it enticing? Very important. Does it make you curious that you want to walk that extra block and go to a place? Wherever you went, is it enticing enough for the walker? So this is like a really cool, and
And it
you've
started
seen
in
this, right?
Raleigh, North Carolina.
It started in Raleigh, but now it's everywhere. But these walk signs, this is actually a wayfinding system. You can print this out from their website, and it's called Walk It.
Walk your city.
Walk your city.
Nobody, what's their website called?
Walk your city.
It's called walkyourcity.com? Okay, so you can print these out off of that, the website. It's not a whole lot of money, but it is very customized to your own context because you actually want to know how far the destinations are. So it started in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is one of the easy, lighter, quicker, cheaper tactics that we're talking about, you know, to actually make some of these things happen, lowest hanging fruit, because wayfinding systems can be very expensive and they're long-term projects. So thinking about how could you get people connected from one destination to the other? How can you promote them to walk, or how can you create that proximity by using something really simple as that? It doesn't have to be this, but it could be. And then wayfinding obviously is the long-term step to that. You actually want people to know where they are in a particular location, how far do they have to go, and what are all the exciting things that are around them that they didn't even know about. So wayfinding is a really, really key element to the success of any town. And it needs, for a system like that to survive, it needs a certain level of density, so it's easier to deploy these systems in, you know, downtowns and business districts to begin with, but then it is a system that can actually spread out. So wayfinding is a key element. And then that is the excitement and the enticing feature. This is actually in Paris, but if you're thinking about potted plants, how could you make that even better? How could you paint them, those plants green or red or
Those
yellow?
would be red cups.
You know what?
No, you weren't.
That's image and identity right there. You're just building on the
Yeah.
It was for love. Oh my god.
Snap now. Snap is the new thing.
Yeah. Nobody get these ideas. Nobody write it down. Please. No writing. We're just giving people visual cues to get somewhere. You know? Connectivity, just options for everybody. Because everybody is
I've always wanted to do couch races and build fires. Like have
Or that.
couches and put wheels on them.
actually.
And do like a couch.
Any of these things are a lot easier for us to imagine here because we were just walking on the street and we saw people just walking in the middle of the street or, you know, riding their bikes next to each other, chatting as they're doing. So this is a lot. I would say doing things like this, they're lowest hanging fruits for a community as diverse in terms of transportation as yours. and, you know,
Biking to
cutting
the
through.
market.
Yeah. Cutting through. Convenient connections, because for walkers and bicyclists, the distances are a lot longer than what it is for a car. So creating those shortcuts where they exist. Maybe the opportunities are right here. We see that this park is segregated and split up, but maybe there are connections to be made. So this is all about connectivity and then doing things in the short term. If you need a bump out before you actually ask the DOT for a permanent bump out, that involves all sorts of infrastructural changes and sidewalks and a community that actually needs sidewalks. So when you have to do things quickly to demonstrate the potential, think burlap. It's very, very powerful. And it's good that it's not strong. It doesn't stay, because you want to make a point in like 2 days or a week. If you don't get a lot of rain, maybe 3 weeks or a month or whatever. But this is just to quickly roll things out and say, hey, if we had an extra bump out there, maybe it'll be a lot more comfortable. Maybe you can do that for your sidewalks.
How do I get a temporary sidewalk out there?
No, all you have to do, put burlap, divide the street into 2 parts, and put paint on it. Leftover paint, it doesn't have to stick, that's the thing. It doesn't have to be paint that has a life. It can just last for 2 days. But the point is to actually take some of the roadway away and start walking there and see what comes
Taking
of it.
away parking. Sorry.
No, take away moving lanes. Take away moving lanes.
Sorry, I don't
Yes.
want to make sure.
I had a project that was sort of similar to that, and I was immediately, well not immediately, but I was confronted by police officers, and they said that, you know, this is a disruption of traffic, and
You have to work.
So I wondered how that.
You have to work with the city. This is working with the city. This is working with the Department of Transportation, but them saying we don't have money. The department saying we don't have money. What do you want to do? So you ask, give us a special use permit. Special use permit, very powerful thing. Give us a special use permit for 1 weekend. Let us demonstrate, raise the money and demonstrate what it could be. All you need from them is a nod that, okay, go try it. But you do want them to be on your side. They should know before they see it on the street.
Thank you for clarifying.
It's an art project. Yeah, that's very
No, don't go out and do it. No, we're all about creating those partnerships. You can't just roll it out.
Basketball hoops around my house when my kids would just go down back.
Go do it.
They were so good.
That's so smart.
Yes, you had another question. You had another question.
Sorry?
Why don't you share what you do?
Oh, well, I made a crosswalk. I tried to make a crosswalk that split up an intersection. It wasn't necessarily for good city planning here. It was more to interrupt the space, but
heart was not in the right place.
the idea was that, you know, I was making a crosswalk, so the police officers were worried that they would confuse anyone, but I was using tape, and so, I mean, it was sort of like maybe hit or miss, but I was just wondering, in terms of just sort of setting something up, what the possible problems would be, because I ran into something.
So the first thing is that you have to work with the community and ask them if they even want that. That's what we're doing here. You have to do this.
Class, so it was, you know,
Nope.
very, you know, timed. and
You can't do
everything.
that.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to support that. We're not going to endorse that. That's what we're doing here. We're getting the community to tell us what they want. Step 1, you can't do anything without that.
Right.
And this is a short way to actually making happen what we hear in the room. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So if the community tells you they want that, there are less chances of that confusion happening and somebody getting hit because they wanted that in the first place. And then you work with the department. You want to do a sanctioned project. And that's what I'm saying. When they tell you we don't have the money, we don't have the budget, that is when you convince them to do something like this. So let us demonstrate what it could be. Click pictures, research, make videos, and then use that for fundraising for the next phase when you actually make capital improvements, when you actually start thinking infrastructure. Use this as your data. This is your research right here, and use it for something good in the long term. Sorry for any confusions, but street paintings, traffic calming measure, but these are sanctioned and legal in Portland, Oregon. Because the city actually has a procedure in place. Any community can apply for a street painting, they can apply for an intersection painting, and there's a process they have to go through. They have to get at least 80% yeses from the people who live around there. So the community has to be engaged. There's a particular area that you have to cover. So people who live within I think a block of the intersection, 80% of them should be in support of an intersection painting, and then you can bring them out, and then you can actually do the intersection painting. The city helps you in that, with resources as well. But there are things like that that exist out there, and I was recently in Montclair, New Jersey, where an intersection painting itself like that doesn't exist. A sanctioning process for that doesn't exist. But the city is receptive of art projects associated to the intersections. So this was one of the art projects, and it was a Girl Scout actually. She created the design, she worked with the traffic department, they closed the streets for them for the weekend to actually paint it, and the community sort of came out. It was a whole community building, capacity building, and community empowerment exercise, and everybody contributed in their own way. Some people helped paint, some people brought food. It was just the community coming together to do something for the better, even if it doesn't calm traffic. It actually did help make a better community, make a better place, and it just added some color. So not all communities have it, have it that easy for you as Portland, but there are ways. There are always ways to work with. And then uses and amenities, very important, because why would you want to go somewhere where there's nothing for you to do? Simple as that. So they have to be fun, they have to be vital, they have to be embedded in the needs of the community, they have to be active, and I already said the indigenous, they have to be very unique, and they have to be sustainable. So something, if that's interesting tomorrow, it evolves into something that's interesting, the day after that, and the month after that, or the year after that. So it has to be something that's sustainable on its own, and something that's affordable. If it's not affordable, again, you're making it like a club, you're making it exclusive. So in public spaces, affordability is always one of the key things. And then it has to be challenging in some way. The whole idea of flow, Csikszentmihalyi's theory, there's a particular level of challenge and there's a particular level of expertise that you have, and the balance is somewhere right in between. So if you become more and more expert over time, the challenge has to be more and more and more with time as well. So you have to hit that flow chart, and there are books about that, so I'm not going to go into detail. So something that everybody enjoys coming together for, so things like that. Could be a market. Or it could be basketball, it could be picnicking together, it could be a potluck, or everybody comes out and cooks together. Whatever it is that is a good use for here. Maybe it's coffee. Coffee works everywhere.
And these are in pop-up storefronts in Detroit. This was sort of a project to reinvigorate vacant storefronts in Detroit where there was absolutely no demand for retail at all whatsoever. So this was a grant that the Kresge Foundation offered to a community arts and entrepreneur group to kind of start populating these spaces for like $5,000 in startup money to kind of use them for community kinds of retail.
And it's really interesting and exciting to just go over what people do with these arts grants. Like Kresge is an amazing resource, and people, how they use art, how they define art is very interesting. It could totally be for the benefit of the community. It could totally be community art project, and it's very flexible. That definition is very flexible. Oh, same thing. So
this is my favorite. This is my friend, the Laundromat Project. They have it, they say, wash clothes, make art, build community. So like going to the laundromat is like one of the most boring things that we have to do in our whole lives. You're there for like 2 hours and you're there with like your 4-year-old and everyone is crazy and it's horrible. And so they basically turn these laundromats into places where people could experience art. So they have artists in residence in the laundromat. Sometimes the artists paint the murals, sometimes they have yoga classes. The one in the upper left is a cooking class. And then sometimes the resident artists do art workshops outside of the laundromat. But it's a way of giving kids arts education, which kids don't get anymore in public school. And moms and caregivers get to actually experience art, and it's like a wonderful way to spend your afternoon. So that's like art and culture in really unlikely places.
And I don't know why we didn't learn that from the laundromats next to bars or burger shops that are combined. Why didn't we learn that? But if we want something positive to happen, just switch that burger use with something else, more positive. Things that people would want to do in those 2 hours on their Sunday. Oh, this is Perth. This is a cultural center, and a lot of the buildings actually turn their back towards the public spaces. As you can see, Exhibit A on the right-hand side, it's the building's back. But the public spaces where there's a use, there's a stage that is very multifunctional. Sometimes it's just a platform, people just sit there. Other times it's a stage, And then there's a little water body, which used to be a very derelict water fountain. Nobody used to go in that corner because it was kind of tucked. But now it's a more active sort of, it has life. That pond has life. It's not that fancy anymore. It's just a pond. But then, it has its own wildlife character to it. And then around it is seating, which is kind of looking at that platform. So in the most unusual place, there's actually a stage where performances happen and little bands come and play. And then people sit all around it to look at that, and then there's a pond kind of separating you. So this is also, they do that at Riverwalk in San Antonio, where their amphitheater has the stage across the river. But giving people reasons to be there, and then surrounding it with other reasons. There's like food trucks and whatnot surrounded by it, so you can grab some food, you can sit here and watch a performance. It's a whole experience. And then kids are there, children are there. You wanna give them something to do. The games that they play with don't only have to happen on a tabletop, small 6 inches by 6 inches scale. It can actually be enlarged. Same idea as the giant chessboard or the giant Jenga, whatever you wanna think about as a game for reference. So having a puzzle right on the ground. Why can't we do that if we want to activate it? And then, so this idea is very simple. Comfort and image, why is it on the form? Because us as human beings tend to leave places where we're not comfortable. And women are very familiar with this concept because, wherever you see dead alleys with no lighting, we tend not to go in there. Or, it's a response that we have as human beings. So public space has to go the other direction of that. You have to create comfort, and you have to be very strategic about this, and you actually have to make it visible that there are things that make you comfortable. A lot of times we think about umbrellas. Why do we want to have awnings and umbrellas outside? Because we don't get a lot of sun. Well, you might get rain, you might get fog. Or there's just this idea of having a shelter, a canopy above your head that just makes us feel very comfortable. It gives us our own room. So thinking about making it attractive, making it unique, making it usable. So the usable angle is what I was talking about. And showing that it's maintained, somebody cares. And we're going to talk a lot more about this with Cynthia tomorrow. And safe and friendly. And green is the new thing. So just putting the idea in there that we're thinking of the environment. Climate change, everybody, just dropping the hints wherever you can. And so this is a lot of things coming together, the flexibility coming together, the uses coming together, and the comfort coming together. So there's shade, there's a big tree, so there's shade. And having furniture that you can actually move to here. This furniture doesn't belong here, it wasn't initially placed here. These people moved it there to create their own comfortable place. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
No, I don't know much about it.
I don't know much about it either. I do know that I do know that this used to be an empty, like this was one of those buildings that's turned its back towards the public space. I wasn't involved in this project, so I don't know, but this was a community art project. That I know that. So it's like a way of activating the backs that have been turned towards your public space to create comfort. And this is all of those, like all of these principles, they rely on each other. Comfort is totally connected to uses and activities, which is totally connected to the accessibility. So everything's sort of coming together. Places to sit, things to do, shade, shelter, all of that coming together, and things for everybody. There's a lot of diversity in this
That's
picture.
in front of the Houston Public Library.
Oh, Houston.
Houston, which is hot, but everyone's sitting under the nightshade.
People do walk when you let them walk, even in Texas. I went to grad school there. I can tell. I walked everywhere, but I was kind of insane in doing that. And this is Paris, so it's just the flexible amenities and how people are using them very differently. People are sitting together, people are sitting alone. Some people are looking one way, other people are looking at the greenery because that's what they want to do. So just all the ways that your flexible amenities can be used. And then sometimes you need different amenities because you are trying to cater to a different population. So it has to be fun, has to be interactive, and that just makes you feel more comfortable. If you were a parent and you saw that many kids interacting with a particular public space like that, and I'm pretty sure it was an art project, which is sculpture, but just, that's the Boston Commons, right? Yeah, I sat on that one. Yeah, I tend to do things like that as people look at me awkwardly. What's wrong with you? And light is a very powerful thing. So this is actually Camden, New Jersey. If you're not familiar with it, look it up. Highest crime in the country, all sorts of bad things about Camden. But they have this wonderful community. They have really, really amazing people who do want change. There's the other side of the community that doesn't want change and only wants to sell drugs and buy drugs. But then there's this part of the community that actually wants change. And they were gathered in a park that's very dangerous at night. So this was a strategic night activation with lights. So creating comfort with lights and letting people interact with those lights. So, oh, string lights, that's what I was gonna say. Hula hoops, alcohol, and string lights. We didn't want to give you a recipe, but those work. And making it social. It's all about having conversation with, they're probably having a fight and not a conversation.
Yes.
But letting, all our images are very interesting. That's very strategic, so that we laugh. But actually creating places that are sociable, letting people have conversations, and it could be combined with a different activity. It could be combined with another social effort. But just making places open for people. And these are actually, they're chessboards right on top of tables. So these are games too, but they're for adults, obviously. And different people come here from different walks of life. And there are some parks where homeless people sit on one side and they challenge you to play with them for a buck or two. So it's a way of them making some positive contribution to public spaces. So by bringing different people together. This is the Porsche again in Brainstorming Park. A lot of different people. You don't have to buy a beverage to sit there. You don't have to be drinking alcohol. They have heating lamps, and they have shade, and they have lounge chairs, and they have other kinds of chairs, ottomans, everything. And anybody can come there and sit there. And they also play. They have sports telecasts, and they have a big screen. And this is in Detroit, campus Martius Park in Detroit. There's a beach smack in the middle of that park, and this was another one of the Southwest projects that Cynthia is leading actually, but they played this song and everybody got up and did the hustle together. So you'd think that down in the middle of the business district in Detroit, it's very white collar, blue collar jobs or whatever, but it's very different. The people who come to this park because they want to enjoy public space together. So it's all about the subtle social elements that bring it together, something to look at, something to do, something to talk about. So those are all the things. There were probably too many things for you to remember, but those are all the things we wanted you to look at. So if you missed the 99% of those, look at them right now in the next 10 minutes.